Hi, I'm Greene with Chthonica, the show about horror in all its fictional forms, and I'm just delighted to welcome back to Chthonica Stephen Graham Jones. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
You know, this is a busy spring. It's a great spring for your readers because you've got so many books coming out, 3
hmm
reissues, a new novel, and then another novel coming out in the summer, actually a double
hmm
novel. So I wanted to ask you some questions about the books and some themes that we see running through all of them. And just for our listeners and viewers, this will be pretty spoiler free, but we might get into some specific questions, but we'll try to keep it spoiler free. To start off with, Open Road Media is a publishing company that has done reissues of several of your books. They brought out a number of books last year, and this year, on starting March 4, we have 2 reissues, and it's starting with The Ones Who Got Away, your 2010 collection,
hmm
13 stories, all written between 2005 and 2010, with great stories like Father, Son, Holy Rabbit, and So Perfect, Lonigan's Luck, Raphael, Teeth, some really kind of all-time great hits there. Laird Barron wrote the introduction, and I love what he says here from his introduction, a short snippet. Youth corrupted is the touchstone, the recurring theme in The Ones Who Got Away. Everything begins and ends with childhood. For as children, Jones's protagonists dwell closest to the animal state that powers the overmind, are thus privy to, albeit powerless against, the terrible truth, have not developed a thick insulating shell of incredulity, and are thus scarred, if not damned, to be receivers and carriers of horror. And as soon as his introduction ends of essentially saying there's no cure for childhood, we're hit with Father, Son, Holy Rabbit, which is it really is that is in my top 10 all-time horror story greats. The fact that you can see that love can be both beautiful and horrific at the same time. I don't know anything else that does that, but
Thank you.
yeah, there's something that I found kind of interesting about the number of the stories in this collection, and some of the other works that we're talking about during this time is turning 12, or maybe it's 12 that turns you. The narrator of the story Monster, the 4 kids in the story Raphael, Junior in Mapping the Interior, and the narrator of Till the Morning Comes. They're all 12 years old. Is there anything in particular about that age that you think is that draws you to stories that happen to so many of your characters at that time?
That's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that about 12 years old. I wonder if I just got like I fell in love with that last line of Stand By Me, Like I'd never have friends like I did when I was 12 years old. God, does anybody? It's something like that,
Yeah.
and that
Yes.
still like gives me tingles. It's such a good line. But yeah, I mean, to me, 12 and 17 are 2 of the more important ages in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we can say that 40 is important, but to me, 40 wasn't important. It was just a weird year. It was just another year, But 12 and between when you're 12 and when you're 17, you're about to undergo such massive overhauls, changes. Your whole life is going to be upended and come out different. And those are just inherently interesting to me and fascinating. And it was so cool, like hearing you read Laird's a piece of Laird's intro again. Number one, just to hear Laird's prose, he's amazing, of
Yes.
course. But number two, because when he submitted that intro to the publisher and they sent it on to me, I read it and I thought, really, it's all kids. And so I paged through the stories and I was like, oh man, I did do that, didn't I? I had no idea. Like Laird saw it, I didn't even see it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
A psychologist friend of mine talks about when he does when he counsels people and kind of
Mhm.
gives them, he's kind of a spiritual advisor, and he gets them
Mhm.
to talk about their families, grandparents, parents, siblings, significant events in their lives, and he really keeps tracing it back to when you were age 12. He has this theory: when you're
Mhm.
12, that's the time by which you have figured out what it takes to survive, and it's locked in, and you're going to
Huh.
kind of be enslaved to whatever the dynamic is psychologically going on when you're 12. So
Neat.
from I guess from that, if he's right about that, I think he
Yeah.
probably is. If he's right about that, I mean there is a lot of psychological stuff going on.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything happening when you were age 12 that was just very significant or unusual?
I mean, the big thing. I mean, I guess two big things. My mom was married to a guy who she divorced when I was 12, I believe, and he had been my stepdad for, I don't know, like the longest of any of them, maybe 4 years, something like that. And also, I mean, I went from sixth grade to seventh grade, which at my school, Greenwood, that meant going from one building to another building.
Yeah.
And that, it's terrifying because suddenly I had a schedule that I had to like go here and go there, and I had a locker, and it was like, how am I ever going to deal with this? This is so different, and it was, I mean, it's wonderful, but it's terrifying too. It's fundamentally terrifying. And also you're going from being like the big fish in the little pond to being just a completely inconsequential fish that all the seniors want to pick on.
The minnow among sharks. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's something else about that, just kind of being that age, and I see it in Raphael and in your novella Mapping the Interior a lot. Is that there's kind of a, I don't know exactly what to call it, but I think of it as pre-adolescent folk mysticism. They're all trying to figure out these processes are happening around them. They're super, we think of them as pretty much supernatural, paranormal. There seems to be a ghost, the ghost of Junior's dad is coming back. And how is that happening? And what does he need to do to get control over essentially a flesh golem or a, reanimated dead person or whatever? Raphael and his friend, or sorry, Gabe and his friends and Raphael trying to figure out how to test for a witch and things like that. Was there any like, is this something you associate with being a little kid and you're trying to figure out things? Were these like games or theories that you and your friends had when you were young?
Not my friends, but I did for sure. This was like the way that Junior thinks in Mapping the Interior. That's 100% how I think, or how I thought at the time. Also, like number A, I'm terrified of the world. And did I say number A? That's weird. Like A, I'm terrified of the world, and B, I have this longing to like order it, to rationally make it make sense. And I think when I was 12, I was still hopeful that that was possible. Now that I'm 53, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make the kind of sense that we can really comprehend anyways, but back then I thought if I can just think hard enough and clear enough and think right, this can all make sense. And you're right about that, like that idea of like a folk hypothesis or whatever, because you're also, I'll say not everybody at 12, I guess. I at 12 anyways was definitely engaged in a lot of magical thinking, and I'm still always engaged in magical thinking, but that becomes part of what I would call a rational approach, which is, it's weird to work like mysticism into a rational approach, but it feels right too,
Yeah, it does, and you're working with what you've got, and also your imagination hasn't been tamped down too hard by not like scientific thinking, but just like kind of industrialized education, I guess, where you have to memorize certain information. I mean, maybe different school systems, different teachers, your mileage may vary in that regard, but I go back to Supertramp's The Logical Song, and they're trying to work all the magic out of the world, but that hadn't been when you're that young, that hasn't quite happened yet.
I remember when I was 12, when I was in sixth grade, my mother had to come to school because I was in the principal's office and I couldn't go back to class until she came and spoke to the principal. And the reason she had to speak to the principal was because in my English course, I won't say the teacher's name, but she, it's weird that I still remember her name.
I was going to say, you remember it though.
But she kicked me out of class because I wouldn't stop smiling. And so my mom had to come to school to talk me through like smiling, which was weird, and I mean, and of course I pretended like I'm not trying to bug anybody, I'm just happy, but I knew how to push her buttons, of course.
That's right. If you can do it by doing something so wholesome as smiling, and then you just won't stop. I mean, we have creepy movies about that these days, as you know, from your student Parker Finn, who I remind people of. He was one of Stephen Graham Jones's students as often as possible. What a stunning couple of films he made with that.
He did, Yeah.
I was just really, really crazy about it. But yeah, it does seem like I love how Junior's trying to deal as
Mhm.
rationally as possible with a situation which is overwhelming. And
Mhm.
I think, I guess we go ahead and move up to jumping all around here, but
Mhm.
mapping the interior is coming up on actually going to be re-released by Tor Nightfire
Mhm.
on April 29, I believe it is. Nice new cover here, and I really love the original cover
Mhm.
that Tor put on this novella, but this one really, where you see the house, the trailer,
Mhm.
it's so much about this place. And Junior, his father's died a few years ago. His younger
Mhm.
brother has physical health problems, has
Mhm.
seizures and cognitive trouble, and his mother's just kind of going through messy relationships with guys, and it's just and they're haunted. They're haunted. He believes that he sees the ghost of his father. You get all
Mhm.
that very early on. But so much of what it seems like he and his mom and brother are haunted by is simply poverty. Like
Mhm.
they're living in a, like, next door to their neighbor with dogs fenced in, and those dogs will tear him apart. They're going to maul him and his brother if they
Mhm.
get out. I mean, it's just like there's so much desperation kind of in their lives. And then meanwhile, something very strange happens to him. He thinks he
Mhm.
sees his dad return from the dead, but his dad is transformed in some ways. And he's trying to work out, well, if this has happened, this must be how it occurred, and this must be the next step if I'm going to try to control the
Mhm.
situation,
Mhm.
even protect
Yeah.
his helpless little brother in these
Yeah.
situations. And it is
Yeah.
rational.
Yeah.
Um,
He's trying. You're right. He's trying to order his world, which is not ordered at all. Yeah.
yeah. And I found that I love this, and also in back in the Ones Who Got Away, Lonigan's Luck, there is a
Mhm.
real like you work on kind of creating these, reinventing various mythos. You've done
Mhm.
werewolves and zombies and slashers,
Mhm.
maybe even serial killers with The Least of My Scars. We'll come back to that
Mhm.
in a little bit. Vampires in the Buffalo Hunter, and here I think you had this kind of the mechanics of this monster, a flesh golem, something like that, with his father, and just trying to put together, like, how would it actually happen? Maybe there's supernatural
Mhm.
stuff. Maybe there's definitely something paranormal and unusual
Mhm.
happening. But you
Mhm.
actually really kind of work through the biological, physical mechanics of how these things work. What would it really be like if you were a werewolf? What are the
Yeah.
dangers, like from mongrels? What are the dangers if you get bit by a tick
Mhm.
in wolf form, and then you transform back into a human? Like, that can cause real serious problems for you.
Mhm.
And I kind of
Mhm.
wonder if the maybe less supernatural and more biological and mechanical is maybe scare. Maybe it's more frightening than just like a supernatural explanation. What do you think's
It is.
behind that?
It is. It is more scary for me, anyways. But I mean, I think the reason that my monsters and evil things tend to, I don't know, adhere or stick closer to what feels like a rational explanation, anyways. Even though, like, werewolves fundamentally don't make sense. But if like it's that Watchmen thing, if superheroes were real, this is how the world would be. So
Yeah.
you like drop one fake thing in, and then everything else after that it has to be real. That's kind of the dictum I try to follow as closely as I can, just because I have to believe in these creatures,
Yeah.
and I don't like. To me, a wholly supernatural explanation keeps me from believing in it because it's really easy to dismiss, I guess.
Yeah.
And I want to feel like I'm engaging something real rather than something fake, if that makes sense. I'm not saying other people's supernatural stuff is fake. Um, I've been scared by a whole lot of it. It's just for me to invest in it deeply enough to write the world real, I have to generally lean more towards the biological, physical, cultural, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about with, like, ghost stories, haunted house stories? The
Yeah.
Babysitter Lives. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a haunted house, and you're dealing with, what we
Yeah.
think of as real, not a reanimated corpse like
Yeah.
you would see, or a disembodied psyche that's found a way back into a
Yeah.
corporeal form, which is at least what Junior's thinking is happening in mapping the interior with the ghost of his father. But I think you know, with something like The Babysitter Lives, that would be, I imagine, a more purely supernatural phenomenon going on, or is there maybe something not quite up to the God and the angels and the demons kind of supernatural, but maybe something more psychic or astral?
It is, and I think the fact that it's contained to a single house allows it to turn into a kaleidoscope more. Like Mongrels could be less of a kaleidoscope because it was across the whole southeast, and so there was like going to be objective proof, verifiability of people who are also involved in this and seeing this and have to exist in the same world. In Babysitter Lives, it's pretty much confined to the walls of that house, and within that house, all kinds of I think the rules are a little, and they're not off. I still have to be consistent with the rules I make, but the way I read Babysitter Lives is it's a twisted place that traps people, and bad things happen. But it is a little bit, you're right, it is a bit more, I wonder if supernatural or like cosmic is the right word. I don't even know. I don't think about that kind of stuff while I'm writing, you know. I feel like I'm just another, really, I just consider myself like a reader who has anecdotes about the writing of the stuff, you know. I don't think I have any special insight into the work itself, you know.
Totally. I guess it kind of if you're able to catalog and define the mystical, the cosmic, the supernatural, you kind of bleed it of its what makes it scary is that it's ultimately unknowable.
With horror, what makes horror scary is the feeling that the rules are off. Like if you're in a vast empty space and you can't feel the walls, that's scary. If you're in an empty space and you can touch the walls and figure out the layout and where the furniture is and all, it's still dark, but you know that it's an ordered world, and that's less to me. That's less scary.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm, I go back to that idea of ghosts, and I hear, of course, the one view would be, oh, well, yeah, ghosts are the disembodied souls of humans who have died, and they just haven't gone on to heaven or hell or whatever, the supernatural plane. And then other ideas are, no, it's like the psyche is part of an astral band, psychic band of our physical reality, and these are just like psychic stains that have remained on a place in time because of some traumatic experience. And while I guess I would call that at least paranormal, but I don't know that that view of a ghost would really count as supernatural in this spiritual sense that we think of.
Yeah, that's a good point, because supernatural kind of means more than natural. But if it is like interdimensional predatory aliens, then that's just part of a world we don't know, you know. But they conform to their own like gravity and air quality, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's something coming out of the fifth or sixth dimension, like Interstellar. But Interstellar is a science fiction story, and you've got something happening in a fifth dimension. We can't perceive it or don't perceive it correctly. But actually, it's all part of the natural world. It seems like the real difference to me, I guess, is not so much the material natural world and a supernatural world, but it's the known and the unknown. If an angel shows up and says, "Hey, I'm an angel. We're really here. Look, I do a miracle or something," then well, that is now part of the world I accept as being real. I now have insight. It's not a hidden thing. To me, it's like the hidden stuff that really is frightening.
Like I don't know, what do you call them? Antlions? Do y'all have antlions out there? Like, like those, they build those little like dirt whirlpools, and like those things are unseen, and they're so scary for that reason, because they'll just grab you at any time, you know.
That's right. Speaking of I believe that I do believe that there's a reference to sand lions or ant lions in Least of My Scars. So I guess we can introduce that.
Really?
I think that the crime boss brings that up.
Cool.
But
cool. I wonder why. I wonder if it's because I know about them.
Well, because what he wants to do, right, with the protagonist or antagonist, I don't know what you would call him, an anti-hero, is kind of set up in a situation where the victims are coming to him just like a sand lion. I think that was the setup there.
Yeah.
But also coming out March 4 from Open Road Media is The Least of My Scars. The original cover, which I like quite a lot, there we go, is being redone as this terrifying door. A door should not be that scary, but in this book, a door is really scary. What's behind the door? You walk down the hall of an apartment building and you don't know, and that's kind of the terror of the story. So this writing this was originally published in 2013. I have heard you tell the story about how writing The Least of My Scars took a toll on you. You actually lost weight during that.
I did lost a lot of weight doing this because it would just revulsed me so much to be in William Colton Hughes's head, and it's not a happy space to be. But in order to get this book written, I had to go back there again and again, And I guess I feel like that image we're just showing, like my name is the doormat, the mat, the welcome mat, and so
it is
like William Colton Hughes was just stepping on me every time,
Oh my gosh. I mean, to me, that's amazing. And I think you've described it as like 20 pounds or 25 pounds or something, because you couldn't eat while.
And I would throw up too. I would also throw up,
Oh my gosh. This is certainly the most disturbing book that I've ever read. And I haven't read like Jack Ketchum or Wrath James White or some of the folks who you think of as being like the really hardcore splatter type horror. So this is as disturbing as I want, The Least of My Scars. And people who are your readers and fans, they speak the title of this book in hushed whispers. Like everyone who's read it, it's kind of like oh yeah. Like I thought Interstate Love Affair was bad. Well, then Interstate Love Affair is like, oh, I'm really scary. And Least of My Scars says, step aside, son. And
well, for a long time, like back in the 2000s, I would sign publishing contracts, and I didn't have like a lot of pull, and so I'd have to kind of sign the contract, like largely the contract they wanted me to sign, and that would always include an option for my next book. And so they would have first look at my next book, but I never wanted to write the same book again in the same genre. I wanted to do something wildly different. And so, which is to say, I do a book with one publisher and want to break up with him and go somewhere else to do something different. And for a while, Least of My Scars was my get out of jail free book, because that would be the book I would submit as the first look at my new book. And I would send that to them, and they would say, "Nope, we're broken up." And it was all fun.
Wow, a little insurance there. Interesting. Preemptive rejectability.
But then Osborne published it with Broken River Books, and I didn't have a get out of jail free card anymore. So.
Wow. Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book, I want to say probably about 08. Maybe no, it wasn't 08. I'm trying to think of the house I was living in. I must have written this in 06 or 07, maybe. Whenever I wrote it during a time when I didn't have a book come out for like 2 years in a row. And I thought, well, I did 4 or 5 books, and I guess that's it for me, because a lot of people just do 4 or 5 books, And I thought that maybe this is a natural progression, but I wasn't happy with that, And so I thought, I wonder how hard I can go. I wonder how dark I can get. And since nobody was watching, I could do it, And it was fun.
The character William Colton Hughes,
Mm-hmm.
who is, how do you explain this character? Who is William Colton Hughes? I ask it within the context of knowing that, of course, Least of My Scars, you actually kind of get a picture of what his origin is, but also in this the collection 3 Miles Past, the story of the novella Interstate Love Affair features a protagonist named William. And the collection is in fact dedicated to William Colton Hughes, a fictional character. So there's something about this character that I think is important to you. Why tell his story?
There is. I think it's like the same reason, like if you're locked in a garage with a scary dog, you keep your eye on that dog, because you don't want that dog behind you. And I think that's why I've keep writing about these William Colton Hughes types, because I think they're out there, but I kind of fool myself into thinking that if I can keep them in front of me on the page in the keyboard, then that means they're not going to limb up behind me,
And you were writing this, you had young children at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and you know what? Nothing scared. I was never
Mhm.
more scared than once my children came into the world. Um,
Mhm.
I saw it changed, well, what I would read, what I would watch. Certainly,
Mhm.
there are some films that freaking Kiki's Delivery Service, the Miyazaki film. I
Yeah.
cried at the end of it. I never
Yeah.
cared that much about it before the kids came along, and then at the end, when she
Yeah.
saves little Tombo holding on to the wire
Yeah.
from the escaped blimp, I would explain to my kids, look, she saved his life, and I'd cry and
Mhm.
stuff. Like that stuff
Mhm.
never affected me. And ever
Mhm.
since then, like anything where there's a young child in danger, I'm
Mhm.
really very sensitive to that. So I can't imagine. But I get though
Mhm.
that you're a young dad, a dad of young children at this time, and
Mhm.
if writing horror is how you put some kind of control on the world around you and deal with your fear, I can understand writing something like this.
Yeah, I guess it kind of is. But I mean, I think the bigger reason I write horror is just because that's what I find most appealing, or that's kind of where I live and breathe, And I mean, I always thought I would grow up to be a science fiction writer, and I still love and read a lot of science fiction. But every time I put pen to paper to do a science fiction story, there's eviscerations and beheadings, and it's all stacking up. The bodies are stacking up fast, and I'm like, yeah, here I am in horror again. That's just my default setting. I don't know how not to write horror.
Yes, yes, and of course, sometimes you mix it. The
Yeah,
Lazarus Complex is a
yeah,
essentially science fiction, but it's got one of
yeah,
the scariest ideas I have ever read. And I can't like it's only available. You can if folks, if you want to
yeah.
read a terrifying science fiction story, you're going to need to ping me because I'll send you the link of where you can order it. You can still order a copy of Wrong Tree Review, Volume 1, Issue 1 through
Yeah,
Lululemon or some like weird
yeah,
Lulu.com. That's it,
yeah, something
Lulu.com.
like that. Yeah.
Ping me, I'll send you a link to it. It's
Yeah, I
worth
wonder if I should. I wonder if I should republish that one. I always forget about Lazarus Complex. I
it.
like,
Yes,
like
yes,
I wrote Lazarus Complex and Teeth like in the same moment, if I
yeah,
recall correctly.
yes, yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense. They're both incredibly haunting stories, and
Mhm.
they have there's just yeah, they're like creepy things that are happening that people are seeing
Mhm.
and doing, but there's an underlying dread there. And one
Mhm.
is very terrestrial, and one is a little bit more like, yeah, future facing. And
Mhm.
I love them both. Teeth was really, by the
Mhm.
way, when Ellen Datlow was putting together I met her for lunch one day in New
Mhm.
York City. I was in New York, and she was talking about putting together an anthology that was just based on psychological fear. And she's like, Greg, what has Stephen Graham Jones written that you think would work in here? And I'm like, okay, I've got a couple options for you, but you need to look at Teeth. And in fact, she
Yeah.
included it. I like
See, I
to
know.
think I kind of pushed it her way, but
Yeah, I think you probably did. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. That and Lazarus Complex were two of the suggestions I made to her.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, I also in this in the least of my scars, one thing that is not always the case in your writing is present here, which is that the chapters are really short.
Mhm.
They're mostly like 3-4 page chapters, and
Yeah.
I wonder if you happen to remember kind of why you chose to make such short chapters. What does that do for the narrative?
Well, I think it's when you have to go run, throw up, you do short chapters.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I kind
Yeah.
of felt like maybe it represents the chaotic state of his mind,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he is shifting gears pretty quickly between topics.
Yeah, he does.
He seems to have a real obsessive compulsive condition. He's always
Mhm.
doing things in cycles of 5.
Mhm.
My
Yeah.
cycle was cycles of 4. It was always even number 4 for me when I was a kid. And if you're
Yeah.
gonna step 3 times in one direction, you gotta do a 4th step. You gotta
I know. No, I'm still locked in that. Like I was listening to Brian Regan in some comedy special the other day, and he's talking about, yeah, I got on meds, and so I don't have to maniacally organize my books anymore. And I was like, I wonder what that's like.
Yes,
That must
yes.
be nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Freedom. But yeah, it was interesting to see how short the chapters are. And then you get into like the Buffalo Hunter, and these are, well,
Mhm.
there may be a little bit more of a piece of the kind of literature narrative you would have for something from the turn of the
Yeah.
century, from 100 years
Yeah.
ago. But we'll come back to that shortly. Um, I did want to mention also, before we get too far away from the ones who got away, just a couple of points I wanted to bring up. One, it
Mhm.
seems that Gabe is something of an everyman name for your characters, because Raphael, the protagonist is Gabe.
Yeah.
All Space
Yeah.
has a Gabe in it. The Only Good
Yeah.
Indians, is
Yeah.
Gabe is one of those four men there. Anything?
You know, I think the reason that I never thought about it I never realized that until you told me. When I was 12, my best friend, Isaiah, he was from a lowrider family. Like that's how I'm not calling them a lowrider family. They were a lowrider family, you know.
Okay.
And his brother got shot in the face with a shotgun. His brother was, I want to say, 17, and of course died. And his name was Gabriel, you know. And I think that's where that name stuck with me, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Did you know Gabriel? Were you close to him at all?
Yeah, well, not close, but I was always over at Isaiah's house, and Gabriel was always around. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now we're kind of starting to put together the age 12 and Gabe
Yeah.
together there. Yeah,
I
it
forgot
was
about
just
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
I wondered, like, because I feel like in some ways, I think maybe you've even referenced in
Mm.
other interviews that Gabe, the character of Gabe in The Only Good Indians would be like your character.
Yeah.
I may be
Well,
misremembering that, but
no, I think I've written it in some books. I say I wish I could be Gabe, but I'm probably Lewis, you know, because Gabe
yeah,
is fun. Like he's not bound by social conventions, you know. He does
yeah.
what he wants to. Lewis is too paranoid. He's always thinking. He's always wondering, what are they thinking about me? What are they thinking about me? And I don't want to be Lewis, but I think I probably am Lewis.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh! I've got to mention Wolf Island.
Mm.
So wildly imaginative. I'm very impressed how you tapped into that long and noble history of tales about lycanthropy and marine biology. That great tradition. Is there any other story that's ever dealt with lycanthropy and marine biology? It's insane.
Yeah.
You must have just been having a great week that week and having fun with that.
It was fun. I've done one more Werewolf Island story too. Broken Record. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why I associate islands with werewolves, but I've been on very few islands really, but and let me think. I wrote Wolf Island long before I wrote Mongrels, but I always kind of secretly imagine that that's Darren. You know, that this is where he ended up after
Oh, that's
Mongrels.
hysterical. Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Mhm.
It doesn't come to a very happy end, but
Mhm.
that's super cool. Yeah.
But he has fun getting there though. That's the way Darren is. You know.
Oh, totally. I
Yeah.
always think of Norman Reedus, like a young Norman Reedus is Darren.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's pretty much him. Yeah.
Yep. And then finally, last thing on The Ones Who Got Away.
Mhm.
Of course, it was originally published as The Ones That Got Away. What's
Mhm.
the story behind the title change?
The story is that Sean Wallace, who is the publisher of Prime and the one spearheading The Ones That Got Away, he sent me the cover and he's like, I gotta tell you, because it was originally called The Ones Who Got Away, and then the graphic designer or the artist who was putting the cover together like misremembered the title, and by the time he had remembered, or the time he realized he had substituted that for who, it was already locked into the crossword thing, so it couldn't be
Oh my
changed. And
gosh.
I think Sean would have changed it. He asked me, "Is this okay with you?" And it was such a cool cover. I said, "Sure." But yeah, for the open road one, we're going back to the original title because it's like grammatically correct,
Yes, absolutely. And I gotta say, like that's a killer cover right there. Like
Yeah, it
Open
is.
Road's doing some great work on
Yeah,
that. That's just totally haunting right there. I love that.
that is. Yeah.
Something else I wanted to bring up about it. I see it in both mapping the interior and the Buffalo Hunter, and
Mhm.
I'm going to quote a short section out of mapping the interior, and because Buffalo Hunter, especially because it hasn't come out yet. A few people have gotten early reads on it,
Mhm.
and I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I'm going to be kind of oblique with this reference here. But going to mapping the interior, there's a moment where Junior is thinking about how his father appears to have come back and is in the house, under the house, etc. And again, he's like trying to piece together, like mechanically, biologically,
Mhm.
how would that work? He says, and he's also starting to realize that that his father may be actually a threat to the family now. He says, soon Dad was going to be solid enough. He could just knock on the door, except he wouldn't knock, I knew. I always thought, I think anybody would think this, that when you come back from the dead, like he had, that you're either out to get whoever made you dead, or you're there because you miss your people, or there to help them somehow. The way it was turning out, it was that you could maybe come back, be what you'd always meant to be. But to do that, you had to latch on to your people and drink them dry, leave them husks. After that, you could walk off into your new life, your second chance with no family to hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
There, and again, without being spoilery about the Buffalo Hunter Hunter, but there's something very much like that going on with Good Stab in Buffalo Hunter Hunter. And I just kind of wonder that idea of surviving by draining your own people.
Yeah.
Any idea what's behind that?
That's a good question. I like that you found that. I had totally forgotten that. Initially when I was, I don't know, I say conceptualizing mapping the interior, but I didn't really ever conceptualize it. I just read it really fast and tried to keep up with what was going on. The challenge I gave myself was, how can you make a ghost story scary? Because to me, ghost stories have a hard row to hoe to make themselves scary, because a ghost is usually insubstantial and transparent. Like, they can't interact with the real world. They can tell you secrets that you don't want to hear, but that's not actually going to hurt you. They might scare you and make you drop your warm milk you're bringing to bed or whatever, but that doesn't end the world either. So I had to make the presence in mapping the interior able to interact with the corporeal world, with the physical reality. And I realized that they can't just step out of the ether and be solid. They have to get onto a gradual slope to come back. And of course, there's a price for everything, but that's a big thing. That's probably, if there's one axis that everything I do on the page spins around, it's that there's a price. Nothing comes free. Everything is there's something to be extracted or exacted, actually, for this. And I think I probably get that from some of my very first novels I read being Conan the Barbarian novels, and Conan is always spouting that kind of stuff. He knows Crom is his god, the god of his people, but he also knows Crom isn't going to help him. He's got to do it himself.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Crom helps those who help themselves. I think I may have read that in Conan the Barbarian issue 35 or something. When I was a kid. Yeah.
But you're right. That is a commonality between mapping and Buffalo Hunter Hunter. But also, it makes sense too, because it makes sense to me anyways, because, like, what is it? Ledfeather, mapping, Good Indians, and Buffalo Hunter Hunter. There's continuity between all those books. There's characters that show up back and forth and names and stuff. And it may even start in the Fast Red Road. I have not looked at the Fast Red Road for 25 years now, so I'm not sure anymore what's inside that book. But the seeds of it may be in Fast Red Road, actually.
Interesting. Speaking of Buffalo Hunter Hunter, again, like I know a handful of people who had early access to read this, and people are, what I'm hearing from them is, this is the best thing you've ever written. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm predicting that, one, it's going to make waves outside of just the genre reading community, and I think, of course, it's going to be polarizing. It does. For people who I think are just interested in a page turner that isn't in any way like challenging. Well, this book is comprised of a braided recursive triple narrative. There's three people who have a distinct voice in it, and who are framing up the story. You're going back in time and coming back to the essentially contemporary period, and that's inventive enough. Now, of course, in your 30 years of publishing, you've experimented wildly in the form. I think about, like, writing an entire novel in the second person, like Not for Nothing. I do wonder if your success over the years, especially since like 2020 with the Only Good Indians, and now there's like expectations of having a big commercial hit of a novel. Do you feel constrained at all in your ability to experiment with the narrative form?
I feel obligated. Maybe that is a form of constraint. I don't know, but I feel obligated. I've always felt obligated to give my best work, of course, but I feel obligated to meet people's expectations, I guess. Maybe that's the way to say it. And but at the same time, I'm equally obligated to, like, whatever is inside me that wants to do really weird stuff in really weird ways, and so it's like I'm serving like there's two gods instead of one God, and I'm having to, like, serve them both, and it's fun. I like walking that tightrope between back and forth, and trying to smell things across from one to the other is really fun. Like the first novel that I feel like I completely got to do that in was Mongrels, where I got to talk about these pretty werewolves that are horror creatures, but do it in a way that doesn't really fit what people might expect of a werewolf novel. It's a weird,
and it's a double narrative. I mean, there's like the main through line, and then they're peppered in these kind of stories from childhood, essentially, from younger childhood.
Those flash fictions that are in like third person, and instead of first person, and that was really fun. And you're right. Like Good Indians was initially a long dramatic monologue, and I had dialed that back, but I still kept traces of the dramatic monologue that surface and look like second person for a while, and then they finally graduate into being dramatic monologue, which was nothing but fun. And then of course the Indian Lake trilogy has all those inserted essays and reports and all that stuff, which was really fun to like work some. I call like those novels aren't shoebox novels. A shoebox novel is like you rent a lake house and you pull a shoebox out from under the bed and it's got all these clippings and stuff and photographs, and that's a narrative, that does a shoebox novel. And those can be, I love doing those. Well, I love reading those. I have not done one yet, but I think inserting epistolary sections in a more conventional narrative is like letting the shoebox come out from the bed 10%, and I like that. I like that a whole lot.
Yes. One comment I want to make, and again, like we're really going to avoid spoilers here, so this is a non-spoiler comment, but I will say, well, yes, I love that the novel has three distinct voices, one very contemporary in the form of Etsy Beaucarne. Am I saying that right? Beaucarne?
That's how I say it, yeah.
Okay, so there's Etsy, who's contemporary, and she finds this document, this old document from an ancestor of hers, and then you get his this Lutheran pastor. Again, this is all stuff that you find on the book jacket, not spoiler here, but you have a narrative that he's created and describing his times, and then he's also writing down the narrative he's given by Good Stab, who is from a essentially his time frame, different culture. Beaucarne's a white Lutheran pastor. Good Stab is a Blackfeet Indian man. And so, and his voice is just wonderful. I mean, it is so very distinct. I love hearing his voice, and I cannot wait for the audiobook with those three voices. I do wonder though, and there's a conflict rises between Arthur Beaucarne, the pastor, and Good Stab, the Blackfeet man. But there is maybe a sense in which they perhaps need each other. I got the sense that each of them is, as the tale is unfolded, and you hear more and more about the history of both men, that each of them needs like a witness or a confessor. Even though I think the moral weight is clearly on one side versus the other, and you'll see that when you read the book. But I do wonder if there's a sense in which the two men need each other.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And now that you say it like that, this is one of the first times I'm getting to talk about Buffalo Hunter, so I'm like, this is all new to me. But there's a similar dynamic happening in Ledfeather, actually, and I wonder if since I'm using some of the same sort of epistolary diction from Victorian era, conventions, I wonder if I kind of default back to that same interdependent seesaw of a dynamic,
Yeah. It's really interesting because there are, I think I need to go back and reread it before I say, yes, this is definitely how I see things. But there it seems to be a conflict between both the two creation stories of the two men, and maybe two different modes of redemption.
Definitely.
It's really from a standpoint of like comparative religion, which is something I'm very interested in. There's something there that I think is really rich and worth diving into. What do you think people are going to come away with when they read Hunter?
Hopefully, I mean, I guess the big hope is that they believe in vampires 10% more, the vampires feel a little bit more possible,
Yes.
Because the real goal of any horror writer is that your readers, your audience, they're gonna get into bed 11:30 at night, pull up the covers, reach over to turn the lamp off, and then not turn the lamp off. That's the dream.
Yes.
That's what you want. But the way to make that happen is to put more teeth out there in the darkness. And the way to put more teeth out there in the darkness is to make your monsters as real as you can.
Do you think that setting it in, like, I was not aware of how much historical details, like real historical detail in there, till after I finished the novel and went back and looked up certain names and events, titles of events. Does that help make it scarier?
I think it does, because horror, of all the genres, horror is the one I feel has to, or is like, in order to be effective, horror has to place itself in our world. And to place itself in our world, it often has to reference things in our world and also use the techniques of realism to make that world real. And because that's how you scare the reader. You don't scare the reader by saying, look over there in that fake world, there's scary monsters, because we're not in that fake world, But if you can convince the reader that the sidewalk that this is happening on is 99% a sidewalk they themselves have walked down and are going to walk down again, then you've haunted their world up a little bit. And that's what you've got to do. And it's not easy at all. It's always attractive to set this in a landscape that doesn't conform to our world, because then the rules are a little bit off and you can play with stuff in a different way. But if you can set it in our world or an extension of our world, then you have a higher chance of scaring people, I think.
Yes. Well, to kind of wrap up all of the conversation, the range of your stories over the last 30 years, some of them are, what we think of as literary fiction. Some of them are very deeply personal, to reinventions of genres, and in some cases, the cosmically chaotic. I think of the backbone of the world. That range is astounding. Is there any aspect of human nature or the human experience you haven't been able to capture in a story, or that you think maybe you can't capture in a story?
I feel like my whole career I've been trying to write where the red fern grows, and I don't think I've done that yet. And I don't know if I ever will. Well, but I also at the same time want to write something that makes my heartbeat as hard and my mind expand as much as Richard Morgan's Altered Carbon. That book just gets to me so deeply and wonderfully, but also I want to disturb people as much as Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door, or Sarah Grant's Come Closer. And I guess I want to do everything. Like, I remember reading about Robert Browning, the poet, and other poets would make fun of him because his dream when he was like, I don't know, 17, something like that, was, I want to be the best poet, the best composer, and the best something else. I forget what he had a third impossible thing to be, and everybody's like, temper yourself, Robert or Bobby or whatever. Have some realistic dreams. But why have realistic dreams? That's no fun. Just shoot for everything you can get. And that's what I want to do. I just want to go into terrain on the bookshelf that I haven't been before. Or if I'm going to a place that's well tried, I want to do it in a way that sticks,
This is one of those questions where I'm going to ask, let's see if you want to answer it or not. I don't know how you'll take this. Is there a sense in which Stephen Graham Jones is a work of fiction?
I've heard other writers say that when they do book events, they're presenting a persona. They're not presenting their real selves. And I don't have that ability. I've never had that ability to, like, even when people are having fun bantering movie quotes around, I never can do a character voice, because I think I'm terrified of losing a tether to myself is what it is. And so anytime I'm at a mic at a book event or wherever I am, I'm incapable of not being myself. And sometimes I feel like I'm too honest, like I shouldn't have said that. I should have kept that quiet. But I don't know. I don't have that ability. I think it does come down to fear. I'm just afraid if I start either hiding things or making things up, then that'll become the reality, and whoever I was will drift away into the background and never surface again.
Yeah, I think oh boy, how would I phrase this? One of the real deep-seated fears is the sudden incongruity of psychic integrity. Like, this is who I've always been. This is what I'm going to be. I may change my mind, but it's got to be me doing it. And I can't be like, all of a sudden, I don't believe all these things that I used to believe. That's a terrifying idea.
Yeah.
Just kind of this like complete psychological break from who I am, I guess.
But that doesn't mean, like, when I say that and agree with that, it doesn't mean that I think who I am is sterling and shining, because I know I'm broken in 8,000 ways, but I'm like, I don't want to be broken in 8,001 ways. I'm happy with these 8,000 ways that I'm broken.
Yes, or broken in someone else's ways.
Yeah.
Like, I know what me on a bad day looks like, what me on a day of moral failure looks like.
Yeah.
And it's not what that dude next door looks like when he's making a moral failure, or even when he's being good. It's better the devil I am than the devil I know, I suppose.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm always challenged by people who are like my wife and my son they have an inbuilt compassion that I think I wasn't born with, and I mean, it's not that I can't be nice to people. I think I can, but there comes a point where I'm like, I got to protect myself. I'm not going to lean out all the way over that cliff, because we both might fall. Like,
Totally.
give yourself the oxygen first. And I think my first impulse is probably, I don't think it necessarily makes me a good person, but it's to save myself. And if I save myself, then maybe I can help other people. But there are people in the world who will just run right into that fire, like Jay Daniels. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And I guess I brought that question up simply because, Stephen Graham Jones, SGJ, is, you could say it's a brand. And I think that would be a fair, there's an SGJ brand. But really hearing stories you've told on interviews about when you were a little kid, like, you went to so many different schools. And when you go from school A to school B, like, you would like take on a different last name sometimes. You would change. You actually had the leeway to change a little bit about your identity. Maybe trying a different name, trying a different, I don't know, personality or whatever.
I would change my front name too.
Yes. So anyway, I just wonder how much, especially when you have like a following and people who are reading your work and then telling other people about your work, does that kind of force you to in some way codify not just your writing, but the persona that you are as a writer?
I think I'm afraid of that codification process. But it does force me to think about things that I never think about on my own. It's not my natural inclination to like look inward at all. But when I have these kind of talks, and it's like I bounce off my books back into myself deeper than I was. And it's weird. And I feel like I have to shake it off, because it's scary,
Yes. Well, we've talked about your books that are coming up this spring. Again, it's The Least of My Scars and The Ones Who Got Away coming up on March 4. And then Buffalo Hunter comes out March 18. Mapping the Interior, that reissue, comes out April 29. And we also have coming up this summer, I believe it's July 15, is not just one novel, but two, the long-awaited printing of The Babysitter Lives, which currently is, if you love physical media, this is the only way you can get it. It's the CD, of The Babysitter Lives, read wonderfully by Isabella Starr LeBlanc, who we all were delighted by in the latest True Detective season. But
she was good.
Yeah, she's terrific. I really enjoyed that whole season. Was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
But we've got that coming into print, but also Killer on the Road, and like. No one knows anything about this book, as far as I know. What can people expect? What can you tell us anything about, like the genre that it's in, or anything about the Killer on the Road?
To me, I consider Killer on the Road a monster story told on the highway, or it's a road movie novel, I guess.
Yeah. And
that's one of my favorite genres of story, really, and it's probably because I cut my teeth on Smoking the Bandit so early, But I mean, there's like Joyride and Forsaken. There's just so many wonderful road movies, and I inhale them all. They speak true to me. The Hitcher. Yeah, the Hitcher.
The Hitcher.
Yeah, the Hitcher is so amazing. Eric Red killed it on that one. But it's set in Wyoming. It's a character. Surprisingly, she's right at the end of high school, and she gets mad at her mom, runs away, gets on Highway 80. She's gonna hook it down the road, and hooks up with some of her friends completely to her by accident, and they run afoul of something that haunts these highways, and it becomes a chase. And there's a lot of vehicles destroyed in this book, you know.
All right. Hey, well, then it's ready to be optioned as a movie. That sells itself right there. But you said also that the book itself, the formatting on the book as this double novel coming out from Saga, is actually the formatting is kind of interesting on it.
Yeah, it's a flip book. And I mean, wow, it's so cool to get to a flip book. Like the two like, I don't know, delivery methods of a novel I never thought I'd get to do are a flip book and a mass market paperback. I thought I'd missed the mass market paperback era, but Good Indians is coming out mass market paperback in the fall, and now I'm getting to do a flip book as part of Saga's 10th anniversary. You know, and no, it's so cool because I used to love those flip books back when.
Oh yeah. Next up, a pop-up illustrated children's pop-up book.
Do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. I think we got
the
other thing would be, I've produced theater for 9 years, including a couple of musicals, one an original musical that I worked on with a couple of my friends. What story would be ideal for adaptation? The Stephen Graham Jones musical of what story would it be?
That's a good question. I think The Last Final Girl would actually go to a musical pretty well. Yeah,
that's it. I think that's it because you got you've got a good cast. It's a fun age. You can do the raw, cheerleader rah 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 number and the and then slasher running. Okay, got to think. About that then.
Yeah. I've always wanted to write a play, and I always have these ideas for a play, but I know that playwriting is not just fiction and playwright. In the different format, it's a completely different beast, a wildly different animal. And who knows if I've got the whatever it takes to do that. But I've had one idea for a play that will not leave my head for the past 15 years, and I may finally get it down on the page at some point. I'd like to.
Yeah. It seems to me like I don't know where like a novel prose would fall with this, but I think of films being visuals that are supplemented by dialogue, and plays as being dialogue supplemented by visuals and action. A little bit different. But you look at like the works of like Tom Stoppard or Edward Albee, and so the intelligence is so dense, or it's really comedic and fun, but still super smart. I think about Larry Shue's The Foreigner or something like that. And then you go into the musical direction, which is adds a whole nother dimension there. I think it'd be awesome to see you write a play, even just to do it.
Yeah. Well, I've read a lot of stories. I haven't published a lot of them, but I've got a lot of stories that are dialogue only with no tags, nothing outside the quotation marks. And that's on the gradient to play, but the play is still far on the horizon. Like I have friends who are playwrights, and I watch what they do and how they do it. And I'm like, that is wildly not how I do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'd say that'd be a blast, a fun way to kind of just stretch out a little bit after you've been doing a prose fiction for so long.
That play I keep wanting to write, it's about hunting, and I'm not worried that anybody else is ever going to do it because it's not an idea any human in the world would think of,
Okay, when I stop the recording, I would love to hear anything you're willing to tell me about that. That sounds fascinating. I have heard you speak recently about doing a possession horror novel. Are you working on that? And anything you can tell us about when we might see that?
I haven't even. It's in my head still, and it's as unformed as any novel is in my head, basically. But I've definitely got the premise, and I know who the main character is, and I think I know who the characters surrounding that main character are, and most importantly, I know what they're driving. That's always paramount. Yeah, I've got to know what kind of vehicle they're in, and
how many pistons, or what's the thing? Like you talk about a V. I don't know anything about
cars. Yeah, no, this would be
V6.
This would be a V8. Yeah,
V8. All right, so that'd be like a Monte Carlo, that was my first car, 76 Monte Carlo. That my grandfather had owned, and it went through my grandfather, my dad, my big brother. He almost destroyed it, and then I got it.
Yeah, I knew somebody back when I was 12. They had a wreck, a really pretty pretty intense wreck in a 75 Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And it was a man, and he locked his arms on the steering wheel. It was a hit, like he hit somebody from the side. They pulled around in front of him when he was on the highway, and he slammed into them. But he saw it coming, so he locked his arms. Didn't have a seatbelt on, but his arms were locked, and the steering wheel folded back, and his head went up to the headliner and burned forward. And he didn't hit the windshield. His arms, it hurt his arms, but he was okay. But it rubbed a bald spot in his head on the headliner. And right after that, he went totally bald. Like he lost all his hair. It was like all it needed was a foothold, a toehold, and it could take all his hair, you know?
Jeez, that's crazy. Wow, that's nuts. Annie Oakley, the famed sharpshooter, she was in a train wreck as an older woman, and came out of that. She said it turned her hair completely white. Like everyone, she would do constantly doing shows and exposés and whatever, and she had beautiful long brown hair. She went through the train wreck and was white haired immediately after that. And then other people were like, she's been wearing a wig for years. So who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the character in Stephen King's The Jaunt was also wearing a wig before that.
Yeah, maybe so. It was the eyes. It was the yellow eyes of the kid that always got to me. That story messed me up as a teenager.
Yeah.
Any like good reads or watches that you want to impart with us?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I loved Hard Eyes. I've been saying for a long time that the romantic comedy and the slasher share the same beats. It's just what's gore in one is like a cute moment in the other, but it's the same dynamic. You know, they have the same build. I think that's why Josh Rubin was able to lock them together and so well. The movie I saw from last year that I saw it late, I didn't see it in 2024. I really like Cuckoo. Cuckoo really impressed me a lot. I think this year I liked Companion a lot. It made me think, Companion was pretty intense, I thought.
Did you see Oddity, Damian McCarthy's?
I've not seen that. No,
Irish horror film. People will recognize it because of this like what looks like this kind of melted wooden man screaming, howling. It was the big surprise for me last year. It's a good suspense. It's actually a good like murder mystery story with some terrifying jump scares and this mannequin, this wooden man that sits at a table. Like the whole time I'm like, when is it going to bite someone's hand off or do something? It's so frightening. It was intense. I saw it in a very brief theatrical run. It was
okay. Scary. That's like the Vortilac, that French vampire film with the giant puppet. That was similarly weird, to watch.
That was very strange. I did see that a couple weeks ago. Very, very strange.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, folks, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm thrilled for the riches that all of your readers are going to get this year, just through the summer, with 3 reissues, a new novel, and then a new double novel. Will we see anything else by the end of this year? Any other like reissues that you can speak
of? I mean, we'll see the Mass Market of Good Indians, and I think True Believers 3 will come out, and there'll be the omnibus of Earth Divers with all the issues in a single hardcover, and couple of more things that I can't announce yet.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Great chatting with you as always.
It was great. Thanks, man.